Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, the lights turned off, the world quiet, and only the sound of your breath filling the room, when suddenly a question surfaces softly but persistently? Are ghosts real? It doesn't matter how many years you have lived or how many science books you have read. A small noise outside your window, a shadow in the corner of your room, can still make your heart beat a little faster. And in that moment, you may find yourself wondering, is there something here I cannot see? Some say that the fear of ghosts is only for children, but if we look deeply, we may see that even adults, in their quiet moments, hold this fear gently in the corners of their hearts. Science offers explanations. Our brains are wired to be alert in darkness. Sudden sounds can trigger the amygdala, the part of our brain responsible for fear. Sleep deprivation can lead to vivid dreams and hallucinations. And yet, there remain questions science cannot fully answer. Why do many ghost stories align across cultures and people who have never met? Why do some people feel a clear presence, even if there is nothing visible before them? Perhaps the question of ghosts is not only about the existence of spirits, but also about something deeper. Our fear of death, our fear of the unknown, our fear of losing what we love, and our fear of not being in control. In the teachings of the Buddha, we find a perspective that does not dismiss the question of ghosts, nor does it encourage fear. Instead, the teachings guide us to look at karma, the nature of rebirth, and how our minds shape the realms we experience. Welcome to TT-Buddhism. This is a space where we gently hold questions about life, death, and what lies beyond, with mindfulness, quiet curiosity, and the wisdom of the Buddha. If you have ever wondered whether ghosts are real, or if you have felt fear around the unseen, or if you have questioned what happens after death, I invite you to stay until the end of this video, because perhaps, by the time this journey concludes, you will find that, whether or not ghosts exist, you can still breathe calmly, smile gently, and live with freedom and peace in this very moment. Part 1. Why do we fear ghosts? Have you ever found yourself asking, why am I afraid of ghosts? This fear is not always loud. Sometimes, it arrives like a cool breeze brushing against your neck in the middle of the night, as you lie in bed, the room quiet, and only the sound of your own breathing remains. It is a fear of darkness, of the unseen, of feeling helpless in the face of something you cannot see yet somehow feel around you. Darkness takes away the familiarity of what we know, placing us face to face with uncertainty. And within this space of not knowing, fear begins to grow. From a scientific perspective, the fear of ghosts is a natural response of the human body. Our brain has a region called the amygdala, the fear center, which becomes more active in the dark. In ancient times, our ancestors needed heightened alertness in the darkness to sense hidden predators or dangers. Even though we now live in sturdy homes with bright lights, this ancient mechanism still remains within us. A small sound in the hallway, a shadow passing by, or a gentle breeze moving the door can make our hearts beat faster and our breath quicken. And when we cannot clearly see what is happening, our minds begin to weave story-estries of ghosts, spirits, and unseen beings hiding in the shadows. Beyond these natural responses, there is a deeper layer to our fear. The Buddha taught that fear arises from ignorance, from not understanding the nature of impermanence, suffering, and non-self, and from our attachment to what we cling to. We fear ghosts because we do not fully understand that life and death are part of a continuous, ever-changing flow, without a permanent, unchanging self. We fear ghosts because we are afraid of endings, afraid of losing loved ones, afraid of being drawn into an unseen world we do not know. When we hear stories about ghosts or sense something strange, our minds immediately respond with fear as a way to protect us. This fear acts like a wall, a shield, giving us a sense of readiness against what we do not understand. But the Buddha teaches that all emotions, including fear, are phenomena that arise and pass within the mind. The mind is the forerunner of all things. The mind is the chief. The mind shapes all. When we practice mindfulness and observe our fear, we begin to see that fear is like a cloud passing across the sky, coming and going, with no need to chase it away or run from it. We can sit quietly, breathing in and out, and smile gently at the fear. You may ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of right now? Is it the fear of darkness? The fear of death? The fear of losing loved ones? Or simply the fear of being alone with no one beside us? When we look deeply into our fear of ghosts, we may realize it is not something to be ashamed of or to avoid, but rather an opportunity to practice returning to our breath, to ourselves, and to the present moment. Fear can become a teacher, reminding us of how much we have yet to understand, inviting us to take mindful steps to learn more about our own minds. Perhaps, with each mindful breath, you will discover the darkness outside is not as frightening as the darkness within that we have yet to explore. And when we have the courage to look deeply, fear can dissolve, like the mist disappearing as the morning sun rises. Part 2. Ghosts in Folk Culture and the Buddhist Perspective. When we hear the word ghost, many of us immediately picture wandering, restless spirits, white shadows drifting in the night, cries of sorrow under ancient trees, or frightening stories told to children in the dark. In many cultures, ghosts are seen as spirits that could not move on, lingering in the human world due to anger, unfinished business, or sudden, tragic deaths. This is why ghosts in folk beliefs are often tied to fear, coldness, and the threat of revenge. People fear ghosts not only because of their invisible presence, but also out of fear of the anger or bitterness of spirits who have not found peace. In the teachings of the Buddha, however, the perspective on ghosts is not meant to frighten us or create superstition. Buddhism does not deny the existence of unseen realms, where beings live beyond the range of ordinary human eyes. However, these beings are not vengeful spirits seeking to harm the living, but are instead beings who are experiencing suffering in realms shaped by their past actions. In the scriptures, the Buddha speaks of the realm of hungry ghosts beings, who live in a state of constant hunger and thirst, craving what they cannot satisfy, wandering in darkness due to the unwholesome karma they created in the past. These hungry ghosts are not malicious spirits seeking revenge, but are beings who bear the consequences of actions rooted in greed, stinginess, selfishness, or harm done to others while they were alive. For example, in the discourse Outside the Wall, the Buddha teaches that there are beings who, after death, are reborn as hungry ghosts due to their negative karma. They wander around their family homes, standing outside walls and windows, hoping for food and drink. But they cannot receive these offerings if the living do not know how to dedicate merit to them properly. The key difference between folk beliefs and the Buddhist perspective on ghosts is the lens of karma. In folk beliefs, ghosts are often seen as angry spirits returning for revenge or to reclaim debts. In Buddhism, we understand that nothing happens outside the law of cause and effect. States of suffering and the existence of beings in lower realms arise as natural results of unwholesome actions, words, and thoughts from the past. Understanding this perspective does not lead us to fear, but instead helps us live with greater awareness and responsibility in our daily actions. Knowing that suffering realms arise from unwholesome karma encourages us to refrain from creating more negative actions, to live with generosity, to keep moral precepts, to practice meditation, and to nurture a compassionate heart. And when we encounter unexplainable phenomena, instead of reacting with fear, we can cultivate compassion, dedicating merit to those beings who are suffering, helping them find some relief, while bringing peace and fearlessness to our own hearts as well. Part 3. Hungry ghosts in the scriptures. When we hear the words, Hungry ghosts. Many people feel fear, imagining shadowy figures wandering in the dark, with hollow eyes and cries of endless sorrow. Yet, when we look with mindfulness and understanding, these images are not meant to frighten us, but to remind us of karma, compassion, and how we should live each day with awareness. In the discourse, Outside the Wall, the Buddha teaches that there are those who, because of their greed, anger, and stinginess while alive, are reborn as hungry ghosts after death. They wander around the homes of their loved ones, standing outside walls and windows, hoping to receive a little food or water, hoping for a thought of kindness from those still living. However, they cannot receive these offerings unless the living perform acts of generosity and dedicate the merit to them with a heart of compassion. One early morning, when the dawn had not yet dried the dew from the grass, a monk was walking mindfully, on his arms round, along a quiet village path. Suddenly, he stopped as he noticed a shadow standing near a tree. It was a tall, thin figure, with sunken eyes and a mouth so tiny it looked like the eye of a needle, radiating a deep suffering. With a calm, compassionate gaze, the monk asked, "Who are you, and why do you appear to be in such deep suffering?" The hungry ghost lowered its head, its voice rough. "Venerable sir, I am a hungry ghost. I am hungry, I am thirsty, and I am in pain every moment. Yet I cannot eat or drink, even when I stand before rivers or plates full of food." The monk paused for a moment, then gently asked, "Why have you fallen into this state of suffering?" The hungry ghost's voice trembled. "When I was alive, I had wealth and abundance, but I was stingy. I refused to share with anyone, and I even stopped my family from giving to those in need or making offerings. I was afraid of losing what I had, afraid others would benefit, afraid of lacking in the future. I lived my whole life trapped in fear and selfishness. Now, I thirst but cannot drink, I hunger but cannot swallow, and my mouth is so small that even standing before a river, I cannot take a drop of water. Hunger and thirst burn me with every breath." The monk replied with calm clarity, "You must understand that this is not a punishment from anyone else, but the natural result of the actions you created while you were alive. However, if your living relatives perform acts of generosity, make offerings, and dedicate the merit to you with a sincere heart, you will be able to receive that merit, easing your suffering and allowing you to leave this state." Hearing these words, the hungry ghost's eyes glimmered with hope. It bowed deeply to the monk before slowly fading into the air, leaving behind a silent lesson for the monk and all who hear this story. Stories about hungry ghosts in the scriptures are not there to frighten us, but to remind us that every action, word, and thought carries the seeds of karma. Living with greed, anger, and selfishness plants the seeds of suffering for the future, while living with compassion, generosity, and loving kindness plants the seeds of peace for ourselves and others. The Buddha teaches that those who are alive should create merit, make offerings, and dedicate the merit to those who have passed away, so that they may receive these merits, reduce their suffering, and have the opportunity to be reborn in better realms. Dedicating merit is not merely a ritual, but a practice of compassion and gratitude. When you light incense and sincerely wish for your departed parents, grandparents, or loved ones to find peace, you are building a bridge of love that transcends time and space. You may gently recite, "May the merit from this act be dedicated to my departed loved ones. May they find peace, ease their suffering, and be free from realms of hunger and thirst." When you live with generosity and loving kindness, and dedicate your merit to those who have passed away, you are not only helping them but also helping yourself to live with greater peace, without fear of stories about ghosts or the unknown. For when we understand karma, we realize that we are creating our own realms of peace through each mindful breath, each act of kindness, and each moment of compassionate thought. This way, when you close your eyes at night, you can breathe out softly and smile, knowing that you have lived this day fully with mindfulness, compassion, and without unnecessary fear in this impermanent world. Part 4. Science, meditation, and the experience of seeing ghosts. Have you ever heard someone say they saw a ghost in the middle of the night or felt as if someone was standing behind them in a dark room? Many people have experienced these moments that send a chill down the spine, unsure whether what they felt was real or just their imagination. From a scientific perspective, strong electromagnetic fields, sleep deprivation, prolonged stress, or neurological imbalances can create experiences that feel like seeing or sensing an unseen presence nearby. When we are exhausted, the brain can blur the lines between reality and imagination, creating images or sounds that are not truly there, like footsteps at night, a shadow passing by the window, or the feeling that someone is watching us. However, there are also those who, during deep meditation, when the mind becomes calm and clear, begin to sense subtle layers of energy or see unusual images arising during their practice. This is not unusual, as a quiet and sensitive mind can perceive finer levels of reality. Yet, the Buddha teaches that we should not chase after these phenomena, nor should we take pride in having these unusual experiences. If we become attached to them, the mind can easily fall into fear, curiosity, or craving, losing the stability and peace we have cultivated through practice. The purpose of meditation is not to see ghosts or seek extraordinary experiences, but to observe, recognize, and let go, allowing the mind to become more stable, free, and clear. If you have ever had these strange experiences, you do not need to fear or immediately label them as ghosts. Instead, you can gently breathe in and out, observe the feeling with calmness, and return to your breath, your steps, and your mindfulness in the present moment. When we maintain mindfulness, we see that all phenomena arise and pass away. Nothing lasts forever, and nothing can truly harm us when we are anchored in inner peace. You will realize that whether ghosts exist or not is not what truly matters. What matters is whether your mind is at peace in this very moment. Part 5. Rebirth and the stream of consciousness in Buddhism. When people think about death, many feel fear. Part of this fear comes from not knowing what happens after our last breath, and part comes from the belief that there is an eternal self that either continues or disappears completely when the body ceases to function. However, in the teachings of the Buddha, there is no concept of an immortal, unchanging soul that leaves the body to wander. Instead, the Buddha taught that death is not a complete end, nor is it the continuation of an unchanging self. Rather, it is the continuation of a stream of consciousness that flows according to the karma we have created during this life. You can think of this stream of consciousness like a river. The water in the river is never the same from one moment to the next, yet the flow continues. In the same way, our consciousness is in constant flux, moment to moment, but it continues, carried forward by the karmic seeds we have planted, leading to rebirth in different realms according to those seeds. The Buddha taught that the state of mind at the moment of death plays a significant role in determining where we will be reborn. If we leave this life with minds filled with greed, anger, or delusion, the force of these unwholesome states can lead us to rebirth in realms of suffering, such as the realms of hungry ghosts, animals, or hell beings. Conversely, if we pass away with a mind of calm, loving kindness, and wisdom, we are more likely to be reborn in fortunate realms, such as the human realm or heavenly realms, where there are conditions that support further spiritual practice and inner growth. There is a story in the Buddhist texts of a person who, despite living a life filled with unwholesome actions, was able to give rise to a single moment of wholesome thought just before death and was thus reborn in a good realm. Conversely, There is a story of someone who lived a good life, but, in the moment of death, allowed anger or fear to arise, and was reborn in an unfortunate realm. This does not mean that a single final thought outweighs all previous karma, but it shows that the mind at the moment of death acts as the condition that ripens the dominant karmic seeds we have planted throughout our lives. The Buddha encouraged us to practice mindfulness of death, maranasati, not to make us fearful, but to help us appreciate every breath we have and every day we are alive. When we deeply understand impermanence, we no longer live carelessly or waste our precious time on things that do not bring true peace, but instead, we begin to live with greater mindfulness, kindness, and meaning. Contemplating death helps us realize that all anger will eventually pass, all attachments will dissolve, and all suffering will eventually become part of the past. Death is not an enemy to fear, but a teacher that reminds us to live fully awake. Knowing that death can come at any moment helps us treasure each moment we can breathe, smile, and share loving words with those around us. In every mindful breath, we learn to let go of worries, anger, and regrets. We learn to forgive others and ourselves, because, when the final moment arrives, the only thing we carry with us is not wealth, status, or fame, but our mind, the wholesome karma we have created, and the peace we have cultivated throughout our lives. When we live with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, there is no need to fear death or worry about where we will go after this life ends. We understand that where we will go is naturally shaped by how we have lived, how we have thought, and how we have acted in each moment of the present. Death is not a final stop, but a doorway that opens to a new journey, guided by our mind and the karma we have created. If you understand this, you will treasure each breath, appreciate each moment with your loved ones, and live a meaningful, peaceful, and fearless life. Part 6. The fear of ghosts as a reminder to live a virtuous life. Have you ever asked yourself what is truly more frightening? The invisible shadows we call ghosts in the darkness, or the unwholesome actions we knowingly or unknowingly create in our daily lives? Many people fear ghosts, fear the unseen, but few fear the harsh words that hurt others, the small acts of greed and selfishness, or the moments of anger and jealousy that quietly grow within the mind. We fear what is invisible outside, but often forget to fear the karmic seeds of suffering we are planting within ourselves, which will one day ripen into pain in this life or the next. The Buddha taught, the mind precedes all things. The mind is their chief. The mind makes all. Everything that happens in our lives begins with the mind. A single unwholesome thought can turn into unwholesome speech, then into unwholesome action, creating negative karma that leads us into realms of suffering after this life ends. Conversely, a wholesome thought can lead to wholesome speech and action, creating good karma that leads us toward peaceful states in this life and favorable rebirths in the future. Thus, instead of fearing ghosts, we should learn to fear the negative karma we are creating. This fear is not meant to create anxiety, but to remind us to live with mindfulness, to be careful with each thought, word, and action. The Buddha showed us the path to avoid unwholesome karma through the practice of virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Virtue helps us live in a way that does not harm ourselves or others. By observing ethical precepts, we avoid many sources of suffering that arise from unwholesome actions, and we cultivate inner confidence and lightness in our hearts. Concentration helps stabilize our minds amidst the changing conditions of life. Through meditation, we develop the ability to observe our thoughts and emotions, so that anger, greed, and fear do not easily drag us into harmful actions. Wisdom allows us to see the true nature of things as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. This understanding helps us let go of clinging, reduce greed, anger, and delusion, and live with freedom and mindfulness. If we practice these steps day by day, the fear of ghosts will no longer trouble us. We will understand that the important question is not whether ghosts exist or not, but rather, how is my mind in this moment, and how am I living to avoid planting seeds of suffering for myself and others? Each day that we are still breathing and living is a precious opportunity to do good, to speak kind words, and to cultivate wholesome thoughts. When the time comes to take our final breath, we will not be afraid, for we have prepared ourselves with a life of peace, love, and compassion. Fearing ghosts is not as important as fearing unwholesome karma. And fearing unwholesome karma is not to live in fear, but to live mindfully, with virtue and love, every single day. So that one day, when we close our eyes for the last time, we can smile softly and exhale gently, knowing that we have lived a life without regret. Part 7. The Path to Overcoming Fear, according to the Buddha. In this life, each of us has our own fears. Fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of illness, fear of death, and even subtle fears we cannot name. Some fear the dark, some fear ghosts, while others fear failure or the judgment of others. Yet the Buddha taught that fear is not our enemy. It is a teacher that invites us to return to ourselves, to understand and transform it. In the teachings, the Buddha said, "Mindfulness is the path to the deathless." Here, mindfulness does not mean forcing ourselves to be fearless, nor does it mean trying to push fear away. Mindfulness is the capacity to see fear clearly as it arises, to observe it without judgment, without running away, and without becoming entangled in it. When fear arises, you can pause, gently place your hand on your heart, breathe in deeply, and breathe out slowly, feeling each beat of your heart. You do not need to force fear away. Instead, simply breathe and observe, recognizing, this is fear. You may even smile softly to it, as if greeting an old friend visiting you for a moment. As we practice mindful breathing, fear gradually becomes lighter. We realize that fear is just a feeling, a passing state, not our true essence. The important point is that when we can recognize fear, we are no longer controlled by it, and we do not let it dictate our actions, words, or thoughts. Modern science has also confirmed what the Buddha taught over 2,600 years ago. Neuroscience research shows that with regular meditation practice, the amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers fear responses, reduces its activity, while areas associated with calm, compassion, and focus become stronger. Meditation is not a magic cure that makes fear disappear instantly, but it creates a space of calm within the mind, so that when fear arises, we have the stability to recognize, embrace, and understand it. When we truly understand fear, it begins to dissolve. Practicing meditation does not need to be complicated. You can simply set aside a few minutes each day to sit quietly. Close your eyes and focus on your breath, feeling the breath coming in and going out, observing thoughts and feelings as they arise and pass, like clouds moving across the sky. When fear appears, there is no need to push it away or chase after it. Simply acknowledge, fear is here, and return gently to the breath. You will discover that when you know how to return to your breath and maintain mindfulness, you are no longer swept away by unnamed fears. You learn to live with fear, to understand it, and eventually to transform it through understanding and compassion. Overcoming fear does not mean we never feel fear again, but rather that fear no longer stops us from living fully, from opening our hearts to love, from forgiving, and from living a life of deep meaning. Mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Because when we live mindfully, we are no longer afraid of impermanence or of death. For we have learned to live fully with each breath, each step, and each smile in the present moment. This is the path the Buddha showed us, the path to overcome all fear and to return to the peace and freedom that already exist within our hearts. Part 8. The invisible world and how the mind creates realms. At times, we may wonder, is the invisible world real? Are there realms we cannot see with our physical eyes that exist alongside this life? The Buddha did not deny the existence of invisible realms, but he pointed to a deeper truth. These realms are not separate from our own mind. The Buddha taught, "In this very body, with its perception and thoughts, I declare the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to the cessation of the world." This means that within this very body and mind, we can see the nature of the entire world, the world we live in, the invisible worlds, and all realms of suffering or peace are deeply connected to our mind. When our mind is filled with greed, anger, and delusion, that very mind creates unwholesome realms and leads us towards states of suffering. Conversely, when our mind is wholesome, calm, compassionate, and wise, that very mind creates peaceful realms, allowing us to live with ease wherever we are. Whether or not we believe in invisible realms, we cannot deny that the mind is the creator of our experience and determines how we perceive and live in this world. When the mind is calm, the world feels lighter and more spacious. When the mind is restless and angry, the world feels heavy, dark, and filled with suffering. Therefore, instead of worrying about invisible realms, we can learn to care for our own minds. Whenever we feel unsettled, we can sit down, return to our breath, and practice mindfulness, recognizing the emotions and thoughts arising within us, letting go of attachments, and nurturing compassion, gratitude, and understanding. When the mind is trained through mindful breathing and meditation, we not only create a peaceful realm within ourselves, but also contribute to making the world around us more peaceful and light. The invisible world is not outside of the mind. When the mind is at peace, the realm is at peace. When the mind is unwholesome, the realm is unwholesome. Understanding this, we learn to return to caring for our mind so that each breath, each step, and each thought plants seeds of peace, creating a realm of freedom and ease within this very life. Part 9. Transforming fear into mindfulness and compassion practice. Have you ever been alone at night, heard a soft sound, saw a shadow pass by, or felt as if someone was watching you and fear arose? Your body tensed, your heart raced, your breath quickened, and the thought appeared, is there a ghost here? The fear of ghosts is one of humanity's oldest fears. Yet the Buddha taught us that instead of running from fear or letting it consume us, we can use these moments of fear as opportunities to return to mindfulness and cultivate compassion. When fear arises, there is no need to force it away or pretend you are not afraid. Pause, place your hand gently on your heart, and take a slow, deep breath in and out, feeling your heartbeat. Breathing in, acknowledge, this is fear. Breathing out, smile softly, hello fear. By breathing mindfully, you are returning to the present moment, returning to life, no longer swept away by imagined stories and formless fear. You will begin to see that fear is just a feeling. It comes and goes, and it is not your true essence. Once your mind has calmed through your breath, you can practice sending peaceful energy and compassion to any unseen beings that may be present around you. Instead of letting fear take over, you can silently offer this aspiration. If there are any beings present here, I send you peace and compassion. May you be free from suffering. May you find peace. The Buddha taught that beings in realms of suffering often wander, hungry, fearful, and lonely. Instead of fearing them, we can cultivate compassion, offer prayers, and dedicate merit to them. This is how we transform fear into an opportunity to practice loving kindness, nurturing peace for ourselves and for those who have passed. Each time fear arises, view it as an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to pause, breathe deeply, and return to yourself, an opportunity to recognize your emotions, understand where your fear comes from, and release unnecessary imaginings, an opportunity to generate compassion, sending prayers and peaceful energy to all beings. When you practice like this repeatedly, you will find that fear loses its power over you, because when you are present with your breath and your calm awareness, you are no longer swept away by negative thoughts and emotions. You will have the capacity to transform fear into a teacher, reminding you to live mindfully and nurture compassion each day. This life is impermanent, and each of us will encounter moments of fear. What matters is not whether you are afraid or not, but what you do with that fear. Will you let it pull you down, or will you use it to grow in mindfulness and love? Remember, when you send peaceful energy and compassion to unseen beings, you are not only helping them ease their suffering, but you are also nurturing peace, spaciousness, and kindness within your own heart. Fear is no longer an enemy, but becomes an opportunity to return to yourself, to practice mindfulness, to cultivate compassion, and to live a more meaningful life. Then, when night falls and you hear an unexpected sound, instead of reacting with fear, you can breathe in, breathe out, smile, and silently offer, "May all beings be at peace." There is a question many people continue to hold in their hearts. Are ghosts real? But dear friend, more important than the answer is understanding the law of karma in our lives. Because whether ghosts exist or not, it is the wholesome or unwholesome karma we create through our thoughts, words, and actions that truly determines the realms we will journey to and the peace or restlessness we experience in this very moment. Invisible realms may exist, and there may be layers of energy unseen by the human eye, but fear does not bring us peace, nor does it help us live better. In fact, fear only makes the mind restless, taking away our freedom and mindfulness. When the mind is at peace, all realms become peaceful. When the mind is clear, darkness is no longer frightening. When the heart is filled with compassion, you will see there is nothing to run from, nothing to fear. Tonight, before you sleep, I invite you to sit quietly for a few minutes. Place your hand on your heart, listen to your breath, and smile gently to yourself. Just 1 minute of stillness can be a long step away from fear. You may wish to silently say, "May I be at peace. May all beings be at peace." If you practice this each day, you will discover that fear gradually dissolves, like morning mist under the sunlight, leaving within you a sense of lightness and steady calm. If this video helps you breathe a little easier, please consider liking, subscribing to TT-Buddhism, and sharing it with someone who may need peace today. Each share not only spreads calm energy, but also becomes a seed of goodness for yourself and others. May you dwell in mindfulness, overcome all fear, and walk steadily in this life, with each breath blooming as a flower of peace.